right. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Keto Rocks. I'm Jim Hobbs coming at you live from Summer Duck, Virginia. And to my left or right, depending on your screen, is guitar legend from the Kix band, Mr. Brian Damage Forsythe. How's it going, Brian, from Tennessee?
It's going good. I'm stuffed. I ate a 2-pound tomahawk ribeye like an hour ago, maybe.
Wow. Now, some people be hearing you going, a 2-pound tomahawk. Man, aren't you worried about cardiovascular disease?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you're going to die of a heart attack.
You're going to, yeah. Does your doctor know that you're eating 2-pound tomahawks at one meal?
Well, I don't have a doctor, so.
Listen, we're excited.
That solves that problem.
Get rid of the questioner, and you eliminate most of your problems. So, and we're smiling tonight because in our hands is the journal pre-proof of the reassessment and proposal for food-based recommendations by the JACC state-of-the-art review on saturated fats and health. So if you've been watching any of our shows the last couple of months, you're going to notice that we always reference back to you cannot go by what your doctor's telling you, because your doctor's only dispensing advice that doctor has been taught to believe is in the best interest of you. But I'll say this so Brian's not saying it. I'm telling you that you are your best physician, so therefore take that role as your own personal physician seriously and do your own research and do your own lifestyle of eating and document when you feel good and what makes you feel best. And I just believe, because I've tried them all, that a keto carnivore lifestyle is the healthiest or puts your body in the best state possible to optimize your immune system, to boost your energy, to make you look healthy, and to give you the energy so you're motivated to do stuff. And so that's just my personal opinion. So take your health personally and don't give it to somebody else who, if you die tomorrow, really not going to have an impact on them, but it will have an impact on your loved ones and your friends and your family. So take your health serious, do your own research. That's what I've done. That's what you've heard Brian done. You've heard many people in the keto carnivore world. They've come to their own conclusions based on other people's recommendations, and they've also have experienced the same thing that I've experienced and that what Brian has experienced, that going against what's been taught to doctors is not necessarily in the best interest of you. Maybe in the best interest of the industry, and then you add some other characters, big pharma and the food industry, and they all work together to make the circle go round and round. And there's no, just ask yourself this question: how many people do you know in your circle of influence that has type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, and are constantly going to the doctor, given a statin drug for this, a statin drug for that? I just know in my world, in my life, I've seen a lot of people, and I can tell you the lifestyle that I've chosen to live has caused me to not get sick, and I could tell you when, be able to have a very strong immune system. And I'm not saying I'm Superman or anything, but I tell you what, I feel like it. At my age of 56, but I feel wonderful. I feel the best in my life as I have. I mean, I literally, even though I'm 56, energy-wise, mentally, I feel absolutely great. So I'm excited what we're going to cover with you this evening. But that's my take on and why I'm excited about this report. Brian, what's your take on this report finally coming out?
Yeah, it is exciting actually, because now, you get those people, the naysayers, you know, that they're basing all their info on hearsay and, you know, what's been, all the lies that have been told over the years. And now you can hold up a piece of paper and go, no, look at this. And, yeah, in fact, when Dr. Barry was, he had his little video where he was announcing it, you could tell, you could just feel the emotion in him. He was so overwhelmed and happy and excited and angry at the same time, you know, about the suppression of all the other, well, you know, the fact that vegetable oils lead to heart disease and cancer and obesity. And the fact that they lied and said, that's good for you, but fat is bad for you, when it's the reverse. And it's still like that on the guidelines. They have not changed that. So they're still saying that vegetable oils are good for you, when actually they will kill you. If you eat them over a long period of time, they'll eventually kill you. And people just don't realize that. They think because vegetable is in the name that it's healthy, you know, and because that's the way the food industry markets it, you know, as this healthy vegetable oil, when really it's an industrial seed oil that you could use to oil machinery with. And it's better for that than your body. Your body does not know what to do with that stuff. So anyway, yeah, this report, it's cool. It's really cool. It's cool to have something like that. And the fact that it's out now, it might start changing things. I mean, things are changing, like underground have been changing a little bit, but now I think it's going to sort of go more mainstream. And now when you know, hit some unsuspecting doctor with, you know, refuse to take the statin thing, you'll have this to back it up. And, you know, they may have heard of the report and go, oh yeah, maybe you might be right. But it's going to be interesting to see how they handle it, because somebody recently just had a podcast where they were talking about, was it Dr. Barry again? Somebody was talking about, or maybe God, I wish I could keep this stuff straight. I watched so many podcasts and listened to so many people talking. Someone was spilling the beans about the inside. Oh, he was a drug rep. And he was talking about, it was a 60 Minutes thing.
So he's a pharmaceutical rep for a pharmaceutical company?
Yeah. And he was talking about how that whole thing worked and how they wine and dine the doctors, and it was basically bribery and payoffs to get them to prescribe these drugs. And that's how they got like the opioids, because they were originally only supposed to be for certain like cancer patients or, you know, severe instances. And these drug rep guys were pushed to expand, like sneak over the boundaries and get the doctors to prescribe them for a wider variety of just vague like pain instead of, you know, specific things. So yeah, it's just all that. I mean, all that stuff tied together is just like, such a corrupt industry. And it's all based on profit. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
The drug companies just want to keep those billions coming in, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing to me. You know, you're from Maryland, you're from the DC area. I can remember back in the 70s, 80s, and I grew up in Woodbridge in the 80s. There was just Potomac Hospital and Manassas Hospital and Prince William County. But now there's like 7-Elevens now. There's hospitals all on every corner. Stafford's got a huge one. Mary Washington, they got one in Haymarket, Gainesville, Warrenton. I mean, Culpeper. There's like a hospital they've built everywhere, and then almost on every corner there's an urgent medical care.
Yeah,
I never had those. So the question is, if the information that's being shared for the average American to follow if it's working, then why are we having so much of a population explosion in regards to medical facilities popping up everywhere if the information that we're following is making us healthier as a nation? That should be a clue to you that what they're dispensing is not truth.
Yes. Yeah, in fact, that's what it is. They're in the business of creating a problem, and then they profit on the other end of trying to fix fix the symptoms of the problem they caused. Like fixing the cause of the problem is not in the equation, because there's no money in that. So it's create the problem and string it along long term and just put Band-Aids on it until the person dies.
Yeah. They're throwing you in a pool and then you can't breathe because, and then they're going, well, we'll sell you this mask and this snorkel, and then we'll sell you these 2 tanks, and you'll be able to be underwater, and you want to live, don't you? Yeah, well, this is how you're going to breathe. Instead of the reality of it is you just get out of the pool. Just get out of the pool. But people are staying in the pool because their doctor says you need to be in the pool, because I've heard this too. If you get too much sun, you can get cancer. Well, it's not the sun that's causing your cancer. It's the ingredients that they're putting in your body, especially with processed food and sugar and all the other things that interacts with the vitamin D and the sunshine that causes that cancer to appear. Cancer is just fighting what your body's trying to get rid of. So there's just so many different ways you go. I'm going to read this on page 4 for people. So if you guys have a chance, I'll put the link to the journal article. But if you want to actually read the pre-proof, you'd have to go and pay $35 and get a copy of the report, which is what we did. But this is what I want to read. So this is the introduction to the journal. Lowering the consumption of saturated fat has been a central theme of U.S. dietary goals and recommendations since the late 70s, and since 1980 has been recommended that saturated fatty acid, SFA, intake be limited to less than 10% of your total calories as a means of reducing risk for cardiovascular disease. In 2018, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Human and Health Services asked for public comments in response to the following question: what is the relationship between saturated fat consumption, types and amounts, and the risk of CVD in adults? This review aims to address this important question by examining available evidence on the effects of saturated fats on health outcomes, risk factors, and potential mechanisms underlying cardiovascular and metabolic outcomes, which will have implications for the 2020 dietary guidelines for Americans. So that was the reason for this. And what they have found out, that there's no evidence that the reduction in saturated fat consumption reduced CVD incidence or mortality. Whereas other reports, listen to this, therefore, for the basics for consisting and recommending a diet low in saturated fat, it's unclear. The purpose of this review is to critically evaluate the health effects of dietary SFAs and to propose an evidence-based recommendation for a healthy intake of different SFA food sources. If you go through the report, what you're going to find out is the stuff that when you go to your physician now, which Brian and I have talked about many times on this show, they tell you to limit your eggs and your fatty meats and trim the fat and skin the chicken and all that stuff. This report, what's that, Brian?
Eat low fat.
Eat low fat, right? Yeah. You want to eat low fat. You don't want to eat that much meat. What they actually found here is the opposite. They found that people who lived off of strictly meat, that meat literally had a lower risk of getting strokes than those who did not consume meat. So those are the kind of things you hear. Brian's a carnivore now. Brian, you haven't felt, yeah, there you go, but you haven't felt this great. I mean, when you eat pure meat, I mean, one ingredient products outside of salt and pepper and some spices, how does your body respond to just that simple one ingredient?
Great. I mean, you know, it's hard to describe because before I started eating this way, the way I felt, I thought was normal. And then until I eliminated all that other stuff out of my diet, I didn't realize that I could feel like this. And this is the new normal for me. And it's like, I eat and I'm full. I eat till I'm full, and then I'm not like bloated. I don't get, it's like, I don't know. I just feel just solid and healthy. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, the proof is the fact that you said this a couple of shows ago, that you haven't been sick in decades. So the proof is the fact that, are you going to the doctor every 6 weeks or every 6 months because you have to, because there's some issue, or are you disease-free for a decade and you feel great? So I just tell you, if I'm watching this show, I'm going to follow what Brian's doing, because Brian hasn't been sick for decades. And then you got people who, I was reading an article the other day on one of those threads, that the person was telling the patient that who lives the carnivore lifestyle to back off of her fatty meats and all that, and go to a low-fat diet. Meanwhile, this guy was overweight. She says, the doctor is obese, telling me how I'm living terrible, yet I feel great. And yet he doesn't see the irony that this fat man is telling me what I should be doing, yet I'm the one that eats the fat and I'm skinny and I feel great. So
yeah, and that's the thing too. Speaking of going to the doctor and all this and that, I don't take any kind of meds at all. I don't even take ibuprofen. And so many times, people go to the doctor, and the first thing the doctor does is prescribe something. I mean, that's in there, like whatever you call it, the protocol.
That's Doctor 101 opening statement. Whatever they say,
well,
prescribe this.
Yeah, that's what they're supposed to. That's part of their procedure, is to diagnose and then prescribe. And something as innocent sounding as like an antibiotic can really screw up your gut biome and all that stuff. And people just think, oh, it must be okay because my doctor prescribed it, and they take it, and then they have this other problem, and then they end up having to deal with that problem, and just one thing leads to another. It's just like this cascade of like problems, and that's a shame, because like older people, a lot of older people get stuck. Like my mom goes through that, where they just prescribe all these different things, so one's counteracting the other. And the older the person gets, they have their bedside table, it just ends up being this whole stack of pill bottles and stuff, and one is trying to cancel the side effects of the other, and in the meantime their insides are just rotting away. It's just crazy.
Yeah. So I'm going to do an analogy, just so hopefully this makes sense to people, what we're saying. So would you be upset at a scalper who was scalping tickets to let's just say an Aerosmith Kix concert that happened in the 80s at the Cap Center? Would you buy those tickets and then only to find out that there is no Cap Center and there is no concert because there is no Cap Center? Would you be mad at the person who sold you those tickets that go to something that no longer exists? Well, that's what your doctor is doing to you, because in this report that I have in my hand, says the American Heart Association recently issued a presidential recommendation to avoid saturated fats based on studies conducted in the 60s and the 70s. 3 studies conducted in Europe, London, UK, and Finland, and 1 study conducted in the US, Los Angeles, comprised the core evidence chosen on the basis of the quality of study design, execution, and adherence. These studies were purported to have compared high saturated with high polysaturated, unsaturated fat diets over at least a 2-year period, to have included biomarkers of adherence and collection of CVD events. But what they found out were that however, the careful inspection of the diets indicates that this was not the case. So the controlled study that was supposed to be taking place did not take place. And so from the very beginning, these studies were based on faulty testing. And yet they're the ones that have governed, at least this part of the world, the United States of America, are the ones that we have been following since the 60s and 70s. And yet it's bogus information. You're talking about you've been living off of gossip. You have bought tickets to a problem or to a concert that no longer exists. And so if you're upset, you should be. And I totally take my hat off to Dr. Ken Berry, and he has to feel redeemed in his battle with the industry, because he's been fighting this fight. And he must feel like he's just been a punching bag for the industry. But to have this report come out, I can see why he was smiling the other day and doing a live. I mean, he went live, him and Nina or whatever, Nisha, and he was just so happy. He's happy because what he knew in his heart was now manifesting itself in a report that's respected. And just like Brian and myself and other people who follow the keto carnivore lifestyle, you're going to have some evidence to rebuttal report in case you do go to the doctor and the doctor tells you to do this. You can say, well, listen, can you read this and tell me, because this is how I want to live my life, and this is what the report now says happens when you eat a carnivore style lifestyle. They're going to have to read it, and they're going to have to give it weight. It's no longer just a bunch of people following the next fad or a rumor, or you guys are just a conspiracy theorist who's gone rogue in regards to what really you should be doing. And all you're doing is doing damage to other people by dispensing that advice that you're giving people, even though you're not sick and you're actually living what you're teaching. It's just a great feeling to know that I'm going to keep this right here. And if I ever do go to a doctor, I do go to a doctor. I got something toward my shoulder. Luckily, my doctor is a ketoan, and she's all for the keto lifestyle. So she's a little bit different and a little bit more honest with me in regards to her personal beliefs compared to the industry protocol that she should be following.
Yeah, it's funny because my ex-girlfriend, when I was still in LA, when I first went carnivore, and she was completely upset about the whole thing, or even keto, she was calling it, she referred to it as junk science. And I just had to laugh, because I'm thinking, do you realize that the whole standard American diet and the guidelines, that's junk science? Like, there's no research that says that's good for you. In fact, it's not. And another interesting thing I saw today was that Dr. Paul Saladino on Instagram, he had a post, and like, he's super healthy, like buff, and he had a picture of himself without his shirt on, and then next to him was like this Dr. Vegan or whatever, or vegan doctor. I forget the guy's real name, but he goes by Dr. Vegan or something, or Vegan MD. That's what it is. And the guy's all shriveled up looking. And I was like, who is this guy? So I Googled, to find out who the guy actually was.
Right.
And there was a page I stumbled onto. It had 18 vegan doctors, and they all had their testimonies on there. And this guy, like, they had a little starting quote at the top of their little testimony, and he was like calling that guy Ansel Keys that started this whole mess, the guy that had that theory, and to prove it, he falsified his whole research project to prove his theory, and it was completely wrong. And then he ended up railroading everybody. I mean, he's the reason this whole the US guidelines thing ended up getting where it got to, the whole low fat and making fat and cholesterol evil. Anyway, this guy in his quote gave tribute to, he had these names in Ansel Keys. It said, Ansel Keys, the hero of heroes. It's like, if you're basing your whole thing on that guy, you're basing your whole thing on a lie. It's like,
Right.
how sad is that? And these are doctors. But, I guess if your mind, sometimes people get into things for the wrong reasons, and once they're in there, they can't admit they're wrong, and they'll stick to it no matter what. And that's,
they'll die with their ego intact.
right. And also, if you looked at Paul Saladino and this guy side by side, Paul's like this. I forget how old Paul is. He's younger than me, by several, like a couple decades maybe. But the other guy looked like this little shriveled up old guy. And it turns out that shriveled up old guy was 15 years younger than me. It's like, he didn't.
Wow.
I go, I could have, I would have guessed he was at least 5-8 years older than me. But it's crazy. I mean, I don't want to bash vegans or anything. Everyone's got the right to eat the way they want to, but it's not the healthiest way to eat unless you're heavily supplementing. And that should tell you something right there, that something's wrong if you have to supplement, if your food's not giving you what you need. But
right.
If you don't supplement, you'll slowly starve to death with that diet.
Yeah, it's so many people, and the whole vegan world. I'm not against anybody. So if you're vegan and it works for you, that's great. But the research that I've done shows that over a prolonged period of time, your body is starving and is going to need, and you're going to do, here's the sad part about that, irreversible damage. You're going to do damage to your organs that cannot be reversed. And once it gets to that point, you're almost forced to then do whatever they tell you to do, whatever statins they give you, whatever stuff they tell you to take. You're almost forced to follow their protocol. And unfortunately, there's nothing else you can do. So we are so thankful for the people who share the message of keto and carnivore and who come alongside of us to share this mission with their friends and family and coworkers and community. It's, but now you got this report to be able to, just hand it to them, tell them to go to it, let them read it, say, hey, read this and let me know what your thoughts are on this. Because if they're open-minded, which we all should be, then hopefully it'll cause them to start asking some different questions to their doctor or people who they're following. And that's really all it is to open up a dialogue, because at the end of the day, I don't think any of us want to die prematurely, and we definitely don't want to prolong ourselves living a life when we're just limping along, constantly taking pills, and we're being told that we're going to lose a leg or a foot or an arm because of diabetes. That's no way. That's not living. We should be thriving and living a life regardless of what age you are. You should be maximizing your life, which is what food is. Food is fuel. And when you treat it as such, your body responds wonderfully to the right fuel. And it's so appreciated by me, the number of people who are out there trying to get that keto carnivore message out there, because we've been battling a giant. It's a giant that we've been battling. But as Brian said earlier, the underground research and underground keto carnivore message boards and videos and people that you can go to is been building and building and building. And I can just tell you, there's hardly anybody I've met that did the keto or carnivore lifestyle. There's a couple, but most people have a very positive response to that type of lifestyle.
Yeah, well, speaking of being open and closed-minded, it was a big decision for me to start eating meat again, because I hadn't eaten meat in a long time. But I had to just look at that and go, my health is the most important thing to me. So um, it was worth it for me to switch back over to eating like this. And I'm so grateful that I didn't just push it aside, not consider it, because that was my goal, was to get as healthy as I can get, and to be as healthy as I can be, and live as long as I can and be active, not be in a nursing home somewhere
Right.
for the last 20 years of my life or something, Nobody wants that.
No, that's
Then,
not living.
then you'll get some really bad food.
Oh, they won't let you outside to cook on a Traeger. I know that much. You'll have to eat whatever they're going to bring in that tray.
Oh,
The surprise dish out of that. I can still hear that whatever that stainless steel trays they bring out of that box. And
man, when my mother had to go to the hospital, she fractured her hip at one point and had to spend some time in the hospital, and then she went to it was like a nursing home to recover. And man, the food was horrendous. I go there and I couldn't believe what they were feeding her. And they were feeding, all these older people, and the food, they're basically poisoning all these people. But they have to, because that's what, that's the guidelines tell them that's what they have to feed them. If they don't follow the guidelines, then their funding gets cut off, their government funding gets cut off. So it's just this horrible, where their hands are tied. They can't really fix it. So the only thing left is for when I would go see her, I would bring her something healthy to eat.
Well, it's sad to see when your loved ones, and I've been in that situation, because as I said before in the show, my dad passed away suddenly at age 55, and he was heavily seeing a doctor, and they was following their protocol and all their stuff. Same with my mom. My mom outlasted, lived to almost 82. But I see so many people in their 60s who are literally, they're not active. I don't know how to say it. They couldn't walk from here to the end of the street. They couldn't do it.
And then the first thing they'll say is, "Well, I'm getting old." Like they just figure they're old.
Yeah.
I think
exactly what they say.
Well, I think I told you that story early on about getting a ride. It was a Lyft ride to the airport. I don't know if I told you, but
Share.
Huh?
Share. Tell the story.
Yeah. Well, this guy picks me up to take me to the Nashville airport, and somehow we get on the subject of bacon. I don't know how that happened, but
bacon.
Well, the first thing he says is, what do you call the heart doctor?
Cardiologist.
Yeah. He goes, "Oh, my cardiologist wouldn't let me do that." And he goes, every once a month I get together with my friends and they cook up some bacon and I'll eat some, but I won't tell anybody. and I'm going, "Oh, the bacon's good for you." But it was so funny because he was this old guy, and he kept referring to the old days when his grandmother would cook with lard and bacon, and bacon and eggs, and how good it was, and pour the bacon grease over, cornbread, which is not good, but he was just talking about the old days and his grandma on the farm and this and that, and he just sounded like some old guy. So we get to the airport, and he kept referring to himself as old, and he doesn't have that much time longer, and this and that, and he's falling apart, and so I get out and I'm grabbing my guitars on my back, and well, actually, as we pull up, he mentions his age. He was a year or 2 years younger than me. And then I felt bad to tell him how old I was, but it's like, man, maybe you should start eating that bacon.
Maybe you can become the bacon pusher for those Uber drivers that take people to the airport. They look at the black market. You could corner the black market for bacon in the Nashville area.
But he'd already given into that old age thing. Like he just thought that's the way it is. That's the way you're supposed to be when you're this old. You know, it's like, no, you don't have to be.
No, I know. People say that all the time. I mean, I'm 56, but there's plenty of people in their 40s that I come across and or in their 50s who literally they go, man, you got to slow down, Jim. You can't, I don't know why do you go so fast? I'm like, I'm not going fast. It's just, I'm going. I mean, so I understand it. Well, hey, let's, we got to wrap this episode up, but hey, I saw your woodworking skills that you demonstrated on that table you made. So how long did it take you to take a couple? I think you used a couple of your repurposed pallets that you had in the garage.
Yeah. Well, it took well, to build it, it only took yesterday evening into the night, but it over the course of like a week or so, I little by little, I was pulling it apart. I pulled boards off, I knocked the nails out and pull them out. And so I separated all the parts. So I had like the 2x4s, the bracing, and then the wooden slats. And it was from two different pallets. One big long one, and then one shorter regular sized one, which was, I guess they're 4x4, a normal one, I think is the measurements. So I made this table. It's pretty much a half of the 4x4. So it's like 4x2, and it's perfect to sit, opposite my grill outside. So I have somewhere to set my stuff when I'm fixing my food. Cause I had this little rickety thing out there. It was only like tiny little, it barely even fit like the plate with the meat on it. And, and if I had to wrap it or something, there was like nowhere to set anything down. So now I got a nice little table. I haven't decided if I want to finish it though. It's just raw, but it kind of looks cool. I mean, that was my purpose.
Well, I liked it. I saw that. It looked great.
Well, the purpose was just to, recycle those pallets and use them instead of just trashing them. And they're all beat up and scratched and, chips out of them, but it kind of gives it character, and it kind of has a cool look to it. So I might just leave it alone.
So let that be a lesson to everybody out there. So if you want to be like Brian, order pallets of bacon and then take the wood of the pallets, and you can repurpose it and make tables, and you can cook more bacon or smoke more food outside with your Traeger grill.
Well, the funny thing is the pallets have to do with my whole health thing. The one pallet was the Traeger came on, the smaller pallet, and then the big pallet was my cable machine that's in my little fitness room downstairs.
So there is some truth to that humor that I was just having some fun with. But
now I got to get a pallet of bacon. That would be good.
I kid you not, there's like a Mennonite Amish store in right down the road in Bilton, Virginia, called Messick's Farms, and they had a sale on Amish bacon, and it's really good. I used to buy it all the time. It comes in 10-pound boxes, and it sells typically about $45, but it has nitrates in it. So I don't buy any bacon or any meats with nitrates in it anymore. So I don't buy it anymore. But they did a sale one day. This is, kid you not, I was fishing with a guy just the other day. They did a sale on the bacon for $25 they sold 8,500 cases of bacon in one day for that sale of 20. He was telling me how many pallets of bacon they had to bring in because the number of people who showed up at this country store to buy bacon. 8,500 cases of 10-pound packaged bacon.
Well, that's actually good news. That means that people aren't switching over to the fake vegetable meats. They're
the plant-based food, the plant-based meats.
Yeah.
So maybe there is some hope. I think there is hope. There is hope in the world that we're living in. So even though 2020 seems to be a little crazy, there's a lot of good stuff happening. So take the good stuff with you. Eat the good stuff when you see it, and especially buy it when it's on sale, like the Tommy Hall steaks or bacon or any other meats that you see. So. You got a story, Brian? Looks like you had a thought popped in.
No, you just reminded me. I got to post my meal for tonight. People are gonna love that one. I got the before and after too, which is cool. I always like to do that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that's going to be all I got to say. Brian, how do you want to end the show? What do you got to share?
Oh, keep eating meat. Yeah, I don't know. Stay healthy.
Yeah, there you go. Friends don't let friends eat vegan.
Friends don't let friends eat Beyond Burgers.
All right, everybody. Look, we'll see you guys next week. Enjoy your week. Stay safe. Stay out of the hospital. And make sure you go to our show notes and take a look at this report if you want to go ahead and get it and be able to print it out and show it to your physician or to your friends and family who think you've been crazy or brainwashed to follow the keto carnivore lifestyle. Let them know now you have some credible evidence that backs up with the lifestyle you've been living. Take care, everybody.